Tired of average sex? Frank talk. Most sex is meh. So many people are frustrated with their sex life. Why? Because 99% of people have no idea what to do in bed and can barely talk about what they like and want. Cultural taboos around sex and a lack of sexual education are the main culprit. Let's change that together. What you don't know can be learned. In this series, I'll share secrets of pleasure rooted in both biology and psychology and teach you how to push all the right buttons. Join me in taking a stand against lackluster, boring sex. Welcome to Sensuality, Sex, and Orgasms, presented by Dating Kinky and Curiouser.life. Hello, everyone. Facebook, YouTube, Moan app. Hi, for those of you who don't know me, hello, Sabyasachi, lovely to see you. Hi, I'm Heather, also known as Nookie or Miss Nookie. I live an amazing life with my partner of nearly 10 years, full of love, sex, passion, and exploration. I write books, teach workshops, and offer coaching for better love, sex, romance, and kink for people of all genders, relationships, statuses, sexual orientations, and more. Today, we're talking about the big O. We want orgasms. We want more orgasms. We want better orgasms. But what are they? And do we really care? I do. MFA Design says more orgasms. Yes. Hello, Celine. Good to see you. So I care. I care quite a lot, actually, because understanding how an orgasm works can help unravel how to have more and better and different and, well, all the good things we desire, solo or with others. Whether you prefer la petite mort, French, the little death, the melt to jet your juice, have the big O, get off, gao chow, which is Mandarin for high tide, to peak, or just to come, I'm sharing some of the science of orgasms with you in this live, and some of my own thoughts and interpretations that have changed my experiences radically over the years. Hey, Twisted, locals representing. So I am live on Facebook, YouTube, and Moan. Don't hesitate to comment or ask your questions in the chat a little bit later. When I ask for questions near the end of this, I'll also open Moan if somebody wants to come on live with me to ask questions. I do love engaging, and I do my best to keep an eye on the scroll at all times. MFA Design says, I personally don't care about my orgasm as I get more pleasure from the buildup for myself. But I am a bastard for edging, leading into overstimulation and multiple O's. Oh, yeah. Jid Maestra says, I care more about the female partner having her orgasm. Absolutely. And that's the thing, whether you want to get orgasms or give orgasms or both, right? Because as a woman in charge of my relationship and deeply in love with my partner, I love giving and receiving. I get a lot more receiving, but the giving, I want to do that the best I absolutely can because I care about my partner's experience, right? And as somebody who is non-monogamous and playing with multiple partners, being able to understand how orgasm works and fitting that into different people's responses can make a huge difference in the success of our encounters, right? So whether you reach the apogee, climax, ascend, flood, pop off, cream, spoof, or sprog, whatever you call it, the orgasm is too often shrouded in mystery and vagueness, even by those No, especially by those who should have been teaching us. I'm looking at you, seventh grade sex ed teacher. For this series of sexuality, sex, and orgasm, I'm going to start with the basics. What an orgasm is, what it's not, and how it all works. Now, you may think you know how to get off. I hope you do. I also hope that you stick around because there are probably a few things you don't know, a couple of tidbits you might pick up, and quite possibly a few chances to snort your drink through your nose. Hey, a girl can dream. And for a bit more fun, before we get super technical, here's a few more euphemisms for orgasm. Bust a nut. Nilabasan na to. Tagalog for I'm finishing or exiting. Paroxysm. Gush. Clit slicker. Snap the rabbit. Poltergasm. Ejaculatement. Nit ma tulin. Finish. Now I'm the fire. Finish. Whizzle jizzle. Splooge. Prakanda. Utijana. I don't know that one. I didn't look that one up. Drastic excitement in Bengali. Skeet, cream, blow a load. Ezra Shodan, which is Persian or Farsi. Satisfaction is happening. Max out, little suicide, flood, move the earth, get the poison out. I think that's one of my favorites. Get the poison out. Hey, babe, can you come upstairs? I need to get the poison out. And a square meal. Orgasm itself. Good morning, blue dog. I have arrived. Yes. Did you just say whizzle jizzle? I did just say whizzle jizzle. What in the wiggle slang is going on here? Orgasm itself, the word, is from the Greek word orgasmos, which means excitement or swelling. Fun fact, this makes orgasm a metonymy, a figure of speech wherein a concept is referred to by something closely associated with it. And for those of you who have been following me for a while, you do know I love to start with a definition. So when I type define orgasm into Google, this is what comes up as a definition. Orgasm, noun, a climax of sexual excitement characterized by feelings of pleasure centered in the genitals and in men experienced as an accompaniment to ejaculation, which is both a good place to start and highly inaccurate, at least for many. Twisted says, get the poison out. Trying that messaging in experimental mode this week. Yeah, I highly suggest it. MFA Designs, what is something Ben Shapiro has never given a woman? I'll take 500 for orgasms, Bob. Also, please, if you are watching me on video right now, please don't forget to like and share it wherever you find me. It is a huge help for me to have people recommend me to their friends and groups or pages online. So thanks so much. And if you are with me on Moan, you can find the video replay for about a week afterwards on our YouTube channel. So would love to have you there. Oh, the YouTube link. Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can. EKYT. Let me pop that into the Moan channel if I can. Technology. I'm running a bunch of things at once here. Ooh, look at me doing the things. Yeah. Okay. Haha. Did the things. Yay me. Okay. So let's break this down because I'm all about looking at how definitions help and hinder us. So starting off, a climax of sexual excitement. Climax is defined as the most intense, exciting, or important point of something, a culmination or apex, which there's a problem with that, right? Because it suggests that there's only one, the climax, which is great if that's how it goes for you, but it doesn't actually cover the variety of orgasmic experiences and multiples, does it? So that's a flaw in the definition. How about characterized by feelings of pleasure centered in the genitals? Well, not all orgasms are specifically centered in the genitals. because genital is defined as a person or animal's external organs of reproduction. Even an orgasm from the butt stuff wouldn't qualify under this definition, nor would those from other areas like nipples, neck nibbles, or those created solely in the mind, like through hypnosis, right? And then the last part, and in men, experienced as an accompaniment to ejaculation. So, setting discussions about gender, too deep to go into here, aside, there are several potential issues with this part. One, some men ejaculate and some don't. Two, some non-men ejaculate and some don't. Three, sometimes those that ejaculate with orgasms don't. And sometimes those that ejaculate do so without full orgasm. Hey, MFA Designs. So simply going by a textbook definition is actually going to give us an inaccurate picture of what orgasm is. And that makes it more difficult to reach it or to make it better, right? Which, when I realized all of that, I was like, well, fudge, don't make it easy on me, eh? Okay, so what is an orgasm? Let's dig down into this. Do you know, and I'm going to do a quick plug here, so if you want to type into the chat, I'd love to read your thoughts. Did you know that I've recently started offering coaching? So if you'd like to spend some one-on-one time with me supercharging your relationships with a custom plan based on your personal needs, then visit me at coachnookie.curiouser.life. Of course, you're always welcome to join me for these free live events or join one of my membership options or workshops. Some of you want more and will thrive with personal accountability, and you asked for it, so I'm offering it. Now let's get back to orgasm talk. Sabyasachi asks, is squirting female equivalent of ejaculation? Some say yes, some say no. I personally, I do make it an equivalent because of the overall general structure of it. That said, it's not a direct one-to-one equivalent because AMABs, or people who are born with male sex organs and assigned male at birth, are generally more likely to orgasm and ejaculate at the same time, whereas AFABs are generally less likely to orgasm and ejaculate at the same time. So it becomes a very different physiological and psychological process for both of them. So I would say, yes, they are equivalent, but not a direct one-to-one. And there's a lot of differences that are important. Hi, Giovanni. Lovely to see you again. So what is an orgasm? And I'm going to be clear here, there is no standard orgasm. Each orgasm depends on the individual's capacity for pleasure and excitement. And how would we compare that? More importantly, why would we? And wouldn't that take the fun out of orgasms anyway, right? Because why comparison? They say comparison is the thief of joy, right? And why would we want to take the joy out of orgasm? I don't see any point to that. For example, both you and a friend get a paper cut on your index finger. You both hurt. Is it worth trying to gauge who hurts more? And if so, how? By how vocal or dramatic you are about it? By who is more proud of their pain? By who cries or who doesn't? Orgasm is an entirely subjective experience, which brings me to a point that I think is important to make. Your orgasms are your business. They're not my business. They're not somebody else's business. What you get out of orgasm is all you. And I'm not here to tell you you have to have orgasms. I'm not here to tell you you have to have more orgasms or you have to have better orgasms. That's for you to decide, right? So let's look at the idea of orgasm is a release. Freud, not his biggest fan, honestly, but Freud first proposed the idea that pleasure results from the release of body tension. He related the degree of one's pleasure to the amount of tension discharged. And honestly, he was right. Often, the greater your charge, the more rapid your release and the greater your pleasure. MFA says orgasms are like opinions. As long as I get mine, I don't care about someone else's. Kidding. Sabyasachi says, mind your own orgasm. Absolutely. And I mean that in the sense of, as you learn more about your own orgasms, as well as others, you can advocate more for yourself in your sexual and orgasmic encounters. Once you know more about how your own orgasms work and what drives you over the edge or to multiples, you're able to communicate that to others more effectively through body language, through noises, through words, right? Now, Dr. Wilhelm Reich postulated that a person cannot be physically or emotionally healthy unless they experience frequent and complete orgasms. He defined orgasm as the capacity for complete discharge of all dammed up sexual excitation through involuntary pleasurable contractions of the body in his book, The Function of the Orgasm, which kind of brings us back to get the poison out, right? Now, I'm not sure I agree entirely with that, but I'm not sure it's far off either. According to Dr. Wright, orgasms are necessary for our physical and emotional health. He presented an orgasm theory related to the process of an orgasm, how it happens, and what stages lead up to it. Hello, Womanopolis. Lovely to see you. Masters and Johnson took that theory further. So with this knowledge, you can potentially alter the quality of your orgasms. So let's look at an orgasm. We're going to start with this. Okay. Stage 1, mechanical tension turns to a bioelectric charge, which then becomes stage 3, a bioelectric discharge orgasm followed by mechanical relaxation, which sounds, oh, so fabulously boring, doesn't it? Right. So let's take that off and let's talk a little bit further. What about taking all of that gnarly language out of there and say, orgasm is you get turned on, excited, and you start to feel that delicious sexual tension, which builds and builds. And then suddenly you release it in a tidal wave of pleasure before it subsides and your entire body relaxes and goes into rest mode. Better? I like to think so. So excitement turns to sexual tension, which builds until it releases and your body relaxes. So in my version, you have excitement to sexual tension to release and relaxation, right? In the original theory, we had excitation and charge. They label that as sensuality. So that's your foreplay, your increase in excitation or penetration. That's where you might find your premature ejaculation. And at the end of the excitation and charge, you would have a beginning of loss of ego control. And that's when you enter the sexuality phase. Again, this is according to the original theories and Master and Johnson, which would be release, the point of no return, the actual orgasm, and then the cessation of excitation and automatic motion. And then the resolution, which is where your relaxation starts. Personally, I think it is so much easier to just say it is all sensual and or sexual, depending on where you're at. So we have excitement, sexual tension, right? At the end of the build of sexual tension, you get the beginning of loss of ego control. That's where you head to your point of no return. You receive your release. You have your orgasm. You stop moaning and groaning and twitching and all sorts of things, right? And then you start relaxation. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking Masters and Johnson. They did amazing things for human sexuality. I just prefer simplifying the idea with terms that are easier to use and making it less specific to penetration versus foreplay or foreplay versus penetration, and removing the division between sex and sensuality for the purposes of our journey in this series. Because I, for one, I feel like they can be both intertwined and they can be handled entirely separately. You do not have to have sensuality for sex. You don't have to have sensuality for orgasm, although it can often help, right? So let's dig down into the 4 levels. So excitement, right? That's that first level. That's when you start feeling it. This is where, the mind's attention has been caught. You may not yet be fully focused, but you're definitely intrigued. And excitement is growing. Womanopolis says, I'm a multi-orgasmic man. The process you describe is when you only have one. Absolutely, right? With multi-orgasms, you gain energy. You don't lose it until you hit that final one. And that's pretty key. Yes, Masters and Johnson has been debunked in many topics, and yet it is still being taught, right? And that's also important because we need to look at what people are learning when they do learn this, just like we looked at the Google definition, and then pick that apart and say, okay, here's why that may not apply to you or to all situations or to all genders or to all bodies, right? Sabyasachi says sensuality definitely helps. Okay, so you're intrigued and excitement is growing. So if you have a penis, it's likely to begin to stir as blood starts to fill the vesicle, swelling it. Some will notice like pre-cum or a thick colorless fluid beginning to seep out of their urethra. Some people might release a lot of this fluid. Others may not even notice it, as not enough is released to escape fully. If you have a vagina, your vaginal walls may begin to contract, causing a secretion of fluid that lubricates. Analog to a penis, the clitoris will begin to fill with blood and swell. All genders may find their nipples becoming harder and more erect. Breathing is quickening. Breathing happens. Breathing quickening. Skin is flushing, and you may make involuntary sounds. Your body will likely become more sensitive to touch overall. Now that's pretty key because as your body becomes more sensitive to touch, it brings more blood to the surface, and the sexual tension, right? Sexual tension, that's stage 2, then begins. So, sexual tension. This is where your attention begins to narrow. Your mind is becoming hyper-focused, and anything other than your sexual feelings or pleasure could feel like it doesn't exist, or it's sort of receding from your awareness. If you have an outie, it's likely becoming more erect, even reaching maximum hardness in this stage. Your testes would be flattening and rising towards the body. Seminal fluid is forming in the vesicle. This is the stage that awareness of ejaculation happens. If you have a vagina, pupil dilation, absolutely. If you have a vagina, the cavity is expanding or ballooning, right? Most people don't realize that the inside part actually begins to expand out and grow as excitement happens. Contractions are increasing, creating more lubrication. Labia are experiencing additional blood flow and are swelling and changing color. Fun fact, the flesh at the entrance of the vaginal canal is engorged with blood, right? Making the nerve endings even more sensitive and deepening the color to a darker red. One of the reasons people tend to wear lipstick is because it reminds us deep down in that primal brain of ours of that sort of experience. All genders will see increased heart rates and breathing, blood pressure will go up, muscles will tense, involuntary noises will increase in sound and frequency, and your skin may become both more flushed and, again, even more sensitive to sensation. Right? So, sexual tension, let's take advantage of that. Hello, ominously baked art. Welcome. Let's take quick advantage of that tension, y'all. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our Plus membership. You can find it at getplus.datingkinky.com. I'll pop that into the chat here on Moan. There you go. There we go. If you love this content and you want more education on love, sex, romance, kink, and of course, pleasure, there is not a better offer out there than our Plus membership. Join Plus and you'll get access to my book, Next Stop O-Town, a roadmap to your orgasm and sexual release. You'll get over 20 hours of amazing sensation-focused presentations taught by people who love the art and science of pleasure, like Oral Sex 101, Learn to Lick, Hot Flashes, Hot Sex, Menopause and Sexuality from Both Sides, Play Y'all, Sex in Multiples, How to Connect Sensually and Sexually in Threesomes, Foursomes, and More, Anatomy of an Orgasm, How to Have More and Better O's, Communicating About Sex Without Shame, and more. You'll also get access to the Plus membership community, forums, chat, and a safe place to ask any questions about the give and take and pleasure. For only $9.99 a month, $49.99 for 6 months, or $74.99 for a year, you'll get access to all of that and over 300 hours of additional content on power exchange, relationships, communication, rope, navigating the kink scene, mental health and kink, and so much more. And if you're not yet ready, although what are you waiting for? Don't forget to like, love, or subscribe to this channel or me, wherever you're finding me, so you don't miss a single live. Womanopolis says, do you agree orgasms are about anal contractions in both sexes? So that is an interesting question. Many people say that in order to determine whether an orgasm has actually happened rather than faking it, you'll notice that your partner has anal contractions. That is true of most people. Absolutely, it is. And one of the reasons that I really enjoy butt stuff is because being able to play safely and without pain in that area during the moment of orgasm can actually overlay a lot of different pleasures, one on top of the other. So that's something that I talk about in my book, The Big Book of Ass, which is also a part of that Plus membership. And you can get it on Amazon. So, okay. So the release, right? The third stage, release, or the actual orgasm. This is it, right? Like, this is the big moment. This is when the logic centers of the brain will shut off, or at least be ignored in favor of sensation and pleasure. All focus will be aimed towards reaching this release. Now, I'm going to talk later in this series about how critical It can be to have the right atmosphere to reach the fullest potential orgasm. Because let me talk about that. The logic centers of the brain will shut off. When people feel like they are in many people, when many people feel like they are in danger or they're worried about something or like that the kids might come in or whatever, the logic centers can't fully shut down and the full potential of orgasm can't be released. And I'm going to be talking about that again later in this series, another episode. If you have a penis, it's probably full to bursting at this point, and the pressure of the blood filling it has increased the sensitivity to a fever pitch. It's contracting in orgasm, usually at a rate of about once every 8/10 of a second, which sets off ejaculation. Testicles are close to the body, and semen begins to flow upwards towards the mouth of the spinal vesicle. This is known as the point of no return or ejaculatory inevitability, since at this point the ejaculation cannot be stopped or controlled and the semen pushes out the tip of the penis. You'll notice if you stop right when this happens doing any sort of touching or teasing or playing, any sort of sensation at all, the orgasm will still come. This is what's called in some circles a ruined orgasm. If you have a vagina, your entire genital area right now is filled with blood and your vaginal walls are contracting, usually at a rate of about once every 8/10 of a second. The clitoris is full of blood, enlarged and standing erect, and lubrication is generally increased. All genders at this point generally experience heavy breathing, hardened and erect nipples, involuntary sounds, and elevated blood pressure. The sphincter, womanopolis, this is for you, will generally contract. Your eyes and mouth may open and close involuntarily in response to the pleasure. Your skin will likely be flushed, possibly even oversensitive, and for some, a little itchy or ticklish, thanks to a rush of blood. When your genitals cannot tolerate any increased blood flow and muscular tension is at its peak of endurance, your body will let go and the blood will return to the rest of your body. The fast release, the spasm of letting go, the total relaxation of all muscles, all tension, and all pain is the peak physical orgasm. Now, let me be clear here. Not all orgasm is created equal. You may feel any or all or some of these reactions. You may feel things I've not thought to mention. If you do not experience the spasm of letting go and the instant release of tension, you've probably not experienced actual physical orgasm. But as I've already noted, that is not the only way to orgasm. It's the most commonly known and understood, and it's worth exploring if you have an interest. And we'll be talking about this physical release and the many ways to create it and experience it quite a lot through this series. But you don't have to experience that, right? But let's say you did. You orgasmed. You came. As you lay panting in a state of nearly comatose pleasure for a few seconds or more, you start diving deep into the relaxation phase. Womanopolis says, do women's orgasms increase with age due to clitoris growth? Ish. So the thing about the clitoris that you have to understand is that one of the reasons it grows with age is because as women age, our hormone levels change. And so that leads to, generally speaking, clitoral growth. However, that does not necessarily mean the orgasms increase. And the reason for that is because the clitoral growth is not the only key to orgasms. We also rely on our hormones for the types of pleasure that we can feel. Our brains have a lot to do with it. Our psychology have a lot to do with it. If we become more assured in the bedroom, we tend to have better orgasms. When we're able to communicate what pleases us better as we get older and more confident, and we understand what pleases us better, we tend to have more orgasms or better orgasms. On the converse side, if we have negative experiences, of course, our orgasms can also start to falter. Physical ailments can cause issues with orgasms, like a pinched nerve on the pudendal nerve, for example, could reduce or eliminate orgasms due to a physical issue. Drugs, medicine specifically is what I was thinking about, but also drugs and alcohol can affect it. Overall physical health. Poor blood flow can lead to orgasms not being as strong. So there's a lot of factors to this. And if you go from the other side, so you were talking AFAB people, AMAP people can also tend to learn more about, as you mentioned, multiple orgasms as they get older and start experiencing less ejaculatory and less genital focused orgasms and start experiencing more of the multi-orgasmic or larger full-bodied orgasms that AFAB people experience, again, because aging brings with it more confidence, more exploration, more awareness, and then also changes in hormones. So that's a very complicated question to ask. Twisted says, as a demisexual, I find that the release will not always happen. In fact, I will either restart or be stuck in the charge stage. This may be covered in a different episode, but I figured I'd shoot my shot, so to speak. Well, yeah, and part of that can be based on, again, the mental process. One of the things that you might be finding is that, as a demisexual, until you are super comfortable and feel able to push those logic centers of yours off to the side and just live in the moment without concern for what your partner might be doing or whatever, that can actually halt or reverse the orgasmic experience, taking it back to another point or not letting it proceed further. So yeah, that's definitely something we are going to be talking about more in another episode, but that gives you kind of an idea of like where you can start thinking about things. Because demisexuality, for those who don't know, are people who tend to want to have that emotional or at least psychological connection with somebody. And if you're not quite there, even if you want the sex, sometimes you won't be able to fully realize the penultimate of the sex at that point. So okay, so the last stage, relaxation, right? Relaxation. The glow, the afterglow, right, of the orgasm. At this point, your body will go into reverse mode. Everything that was done to build towards release is now tidied up and brushed off and put back where it came from. All the blood that rushed to your genitals and skin surface is now returning to filling up other important parts of your body. Now, going back to what you were asking, Twisted. So again, allowing your logic centers in your brain to shut down means that there is more blood and resources for the rest of your body, for your physical self. And that can actually make a huge difference, right? So that blood will now be rushing back to parts of your body that are really important. And your genitals lose their swelling and your skin color returns to normal. Your brain then reverts back to your control, and your attention spreads again, picking up more of your surroundings. Your breathing returns to normal, right? So you're not as out of breath now. Your body also now gets to deal with an amazing dump of feel-good chemicals. And we'll talk on that in another episode when we talk about what orgasm actually does to the body, the types of things that it does as far as benefits, to your body, the chemicals it releases, how it affects your immunity system, and so on and so forth. If you have a penis, you're probably familiar with the refractory period, where you need to take some time to recover and begin building sexual tension again. And that could be a few minutes for the very young and enthusiastic, or a few days as you get older. There is no one size fits all. However, what is rarely discussed is that many people, both with and without penises, experience a refractory period, especially when they're used to single orgasm experiences. And there are a lot of reasons for this. For example, oxytocin is released, and it increases feelings of satiation and contentment. And frankly, they just don't want to get excited again, right? Now is the time for cuddling and love bonding, pair bonding, for example. Good orgasm, especially really, really good orgasm, can be hard. And fuck it, they're tired, right? Orgasms can literally wring your muscles to the point that you can't move, or moving is awkward for a period. Or they become super sensitive, and trying again can actually feel painful or prickly, right? Some people get numb after orgasm, so what's the point until that goes away? Some people are triggered to eat by orgasm. Make me a sandwich. And there's no use trying to interest them in something other than food, right? Sometimes the chemical dump sends them off to sleep like a sweet angel until the next time, right? And so on. So luckily, any gender can learn to enjoy multiple orgasms if they want to. And we'll talk about that more in how do I have multiple orgasms later in the series. But for those of you who are on YouTube or Facebook, you can see in the graphic I'm putting up how the multiple orgasms can look in comparison to the chart I've been showing you. And throughout this series, I'll actually share different charts like this to show you what different types of orgasms can look like. And those visualizations I found can really help people understand orgasms a little bit more effectively. For those of you on Moan, of course, you can see this on the YouTube channel anytime. So let's go with what I've just given you anyway, as an out-of-the-box solution for what is an orgasm, right? KS, good to see you. Always a pleasure. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Can exercise boost orgasm before sex? Absolutely. So exercise can get you super duper het up, so to speak. It starts getting testosterone pumping, which increases sexual libido. It gets your blood moving, and blood flow can really get sexual libido going. It increases the physiological responses that a lot of people, associate with sex. So if you exercise and then you're interacting with somebody that you find attractive, it can really your body can actually start to feel that it is horny and excited sexually rather than just physically excited from your workout. And we'll talk about this also in another one where, again, the physical state that your body is in can affect orgasm in like a million different ways. So real quick, I just want to say, if you have any questions about what we've covered today, pop them into the chat if you're with me on YouTube or Facebook, or in the comments if you're watching the replay. If you are on Moan, if you'd like to raise your hand, I can bring you up and you can ask your question. So feel free to do that. Of course, there's no pressure. Let's see. Cobalt, hey, good to see you always. Sometimes that circulation shift triggers a migraine. Do you know any way of preventing that? So Celine probably has some thoughts on that. She's had migraine issues in the past. One of the things that I would be really careful about is when I've in the past had headaches. Now, I wouldn't say migraines, but similar things, is allow yourself to really relax. One of the things that's really important is not to like get up and start like moving around as soon as you're finished. Lay there and allow your body to come down. Right now, for me, and I will actually look that up and see if I can come back to that a little bit more, and maybe even get somebody on here who can speak to that. For me, it's a factor of I have generally low blood pressure. So when everything starts going back into place, it can cause a headache for me. The other thing, though, that I think is important to note for a lot of people, and again, also me in some sort of weird, my body does both this and that, orgasms can actually prevent a migraine coming on sometimes, and they can knock a headache out. So I think that that would be a great upcoming topic if I can get maybe a medical or sexual professional to come in and talk specifically about headaches and orgasm and that sort of thing. So I'm going to see what I can do there as far as that goes, because that's a great question. Womanopolis says no refractory period with multi-orgasms. So again, I think it's important to note there's no refractory period in between the multiples, but at the end, when you finally tip over that edge, you can have a big refractory period. And I will tell you this, I have multiples, like I could have hundreds of multiples. And also there are times when I really just want that build to a huge bang and fireworks and then to go to sleep, right? So also, even though people talk about multiples quite a bit, don't feel like that is the like be all end all. Like you are not experiencing the good stuff if you don't do multiples. Multiples are another way to experience orgasm. And I highly recommend it, but it's not necessary to have multiples in order to really enjoy the full potential of your orgasms. Hey, Ramon, lovely to see you. Improving my body condition enables my energy to remain relaxed towards pleasure. It's similar to an athlete getting winded during competition and not remaining comfortably focused on their actions. Very good point. My partner dealt with headaches and migraines. Breathing awareness helped. There you go. So maybe start looking into that and seeing if there's something there until like I can put something together here. Twisted said, oof, that's a thing, the refractory period. Oh, yeah. KS says, what if you're in your 30s? So I would look less at where you are age-wise and more like, where are you personally right now? And then how can you hope to do or be better for yourself and your partners, right? Womanopolis says multiple orgasms feel very different from ejaculatory ones. Yes. And also understand that when you are AMAB, assigned male at birth, ejaculation and orgasm are not the same thing, right? So that release of that ejaculatory release is an experience that a lot of people think, oh yeah, that's the orgasm. Whereas the multiple orgasms are more body focused and brain focused than just genital focused. Sabyasachi speaking to exercise like a warm-up. Yes, absolutely. Johnny says, top 5 methods to delay ejaculation. Breathing, absolutely is a good one. Pinching the tip is a good one, especially, well, I'm going to go from AMAB, so pinching the tip. Focusing, I mean, and this is all genders, focusing on another's pleasure. Like when you're super focused on someone else's pleasure, you can sort of like set your own pleasure a little further back in your mind. It sort of recedes a bit. That's one of the things that a good friend of mine has taught men for years. But it's also true with women. So if you're super focused on another's pleasure, you can sort of like let your own pleasure feel through the body without hitting that point of no return and dropping over the edge. It would be a good research study, Cobalt. Womonopolis says, if I ejaculate after multiples, the party is over. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, that is a down. Womonopolis says, do you agree with me that both sexes are multi-orgasmic? I would agree with you that any gender can be multi-orgasmic. Absolutely. 100%. And that various genders have various challenges, and that different people have different challenges, both physiologically and psychologically. So that's important to keep in mind. Ramon says, a play mindset and communication outside of the bedroom has made sex in our 60s as pleasurable as ever. Play mindset, that's something that I'm actually going to be talking about, because again, when we look at the original Masters and Johnson, where you have, this sensuality is separate from sexuality, and foreplay is like this little thing that happens before sex. And you remove that and say, instead, everything is sensuality and or sexuality, regardless of where it lies within the sexual charting that I've given you. Then you can realize also that, as again, like a friend of mine likes to teach, it's always sex. And it's always sensuality if you allow it to be, right? And that's huge. Play outside of the bedroom doesn't always lead to sex, but it can still be sensual and sexual, and give your partner all of those like feel good hormones that they need to get that excitement going during the sexual activity. Ramon says, taking advantage of my longer durations orgasm for very play and explorations. Absolutely. Absolutely. KS, they say women have multi-orgasms. Not all women have multiple orgasms. And it's not just women. Women are not the only gender that can have multiple orgasms at all. And yeah, Womanopolis says, Masters and Johnson said multi-orgasmic capacity in men is close to zero, which is false. Now, what I will say, multi-orgasmic capacity in men spontaneously happening without intention is close to zero. And I think that that's important to think about, is for those who are assigned male at birth, the idea of ejaculation and orgasm being so intrinsically linked makes it much harder to have multiple orgasms sort of by accident, right? Like they just don't happen naturally for most. So, yeah. So I'm willing to take a few more questions. And while I'm giving you time to get those in, if you'd like to, let me touch on one more thing. So I'm not saying, like, if you look at, my chart that I've given you, does that mean your orgasm, if mapped out, is going to look and feel like what I just described or what I'm showing you? or that your foreplay is going to take up like this little tiny bit at the front and then penetration is going to take you all the way there, or whatever it is, or that you'll get that high and only that high. No, absolutely not. None of the above, right? In this series, we're going to look at some other patterns of orgasm, like what I showed you before. Again, multiple orgasms, where you're going to have many smaller hills and valleys versus one gigantic peak. Plateau is reached, in this case, an orgasm, but it's not enough to fully release the charge. And so you can build more, release more, build more, etc. Right? As we move on and grow through this series that I'm going to be presenting to you, the key is to use the theories that I'm offering as a visualization tool for your own orgasmic experiences and how you might want to explore, or how you might be able to explore, new variations for yourself and for and with your partner. Cobalt says, same reason there's still no Viagra for women. Absolutely. And it's really interesting because testosterone in women drives more sexual interest. And how do we receive testosterone? How do we make testosterone? Of course, for those of you who don't know, I've spent the last couple of months having some surgical procedures related to a BRCA1 genetic mutation that put me at risk of many forms of female-related cancers. So I have recently had a full hysterectomy. The entire BabyWorks factory was taken out. I've also had a double mastectomy, and I'm in the middle of a reconstruction, which means that the parts of me, big parts of me, that helped produce estrogen, for example, and help regulate my girly hormones are gone. So I'm on hormone replacement therapy. And that's also something that I'd like to, planning to bring in an expert to talk about how hormones affect the sexual experience, and how to get your hormones tested, how to understand where you might be lacking, or how you might be out of balance, and so on and so forth moving forward. Because again, this is something that I feel can be a huge factor. Right now, I'm focused deeply on healing and getting through this process. I'm going to have another surgery, probably several, and to get myself reconstructed back. And also how to maintain the psychological aspect of feeling sexy through hormone fluctuations, through things like surgeries and so on and so forth, which cause stress, and stress can be a real sensuality and sexuality killer. So yeah, these are the types of things that I'm hoping to really dig down in with you every week or two over 2023 and possibly beyond, related to the actual physiology of sexuality, sex, and orgasms. So, Womanopolis, you had said earlier, you asked about food and drink related to orgasms. So a lot of food and drink related to orgasms is going to be simply healthy stuff. And again, we'll talk about that because those are going to affect your hormones and how you produce, for example, the stress hormones and so on. So let's talk a little bit further about that a little bit later. But you did talk about drinks as well. So a lot of people understand that pineapple juice tends to make you taste a little bit better. So things like garlic and asparagus, right? that can seep through your pores, that can give you a strong smell, can also make you taste a little bit better or a little bit worse, and so on and so forth. So we're gonna dive deeper into some of these questions further on in the series. I just wanted to start out with what is an orgasm, so you have a good foundation, right, where you begin. Blue Heart says, so many fun ways to experience and enjoy orgasms. Ooh, yes. And just wait until we start talking about some of these a little bit more deeply, right? You can stretch multiple orgasms. I do, says Womanopolis. Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I've literally had hundreds in a session. Cobalt says, your inner strength and resilience are inspiring. Thank you. I appreciate that. Blue Dog, wishing you all the best in your healing. Thank you. Thank you. Sabyasachi, take good care of yourself. I'm doing my best. And my sweetie's taking good care of me. So I've got that. And we are having, just for what it's worth, we are having a good sexual relationship as we get through this. It's not quite as often or as intense as I'm healing, but it's still there. And Cobalt says, can be contraindicated for certain medications. Speaking specifically to pineapple juice, yeah, because the bromelain can actually affect how medications affect the body. So, but I'm actually taking quite a bit of bromelain right now because it's good for my healing. It's anti-inflammatory and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Do you know about Kegel exercises? Absolutely. We will be talking about Kegel exercises and how they affect the sexual experience. KS says, to me, men should not use the blue pill. You know what? I'm not going to say should there. I'm not a fan of shoulding all over yourself or of masturbation. There are some natural alternatives to the blue pill, and the blue pill does affect some people not well, right? Also, I don't think that a hard cock is like the most important thing in the world. So that's me. You know, I don't think that everyone needs to, really focus in on that. That's not the only source of sexual pleasure for male-bodied folks. So, yeah. Blue Dog, compassion and integrity. I think that that's pretty key in almost everything. Cobalt says, I've heard people use visualization to restore nerve sensitivity with good effect. Don't know if that interests you. So also nerve sensitivity, omega-3s. And I'm actually using guided hypnosis. And we're putting together, a friend of mine and I are putting together some packages on that for people who are going through the same types of things I'm going through to help them. So, because I have a very different relationship that's already set up to sort of reinforce good pleasure, thankfully. So thank you. Thank you all for joining me today. If you love this discussion, please like and share it or follow me, subscribe. I'd really appreciate that wherever you happen to be finding me so you don't miss out on upcoming lives. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. And let's see, what have I got coming up a little bit later this week? So so tomorrow at noon on YouTube and Facebook, I'm doing high context versus low context, communicating in relationships. Wednesday at 7 a.m., Lucky in Love, being interesting versus being beautiful. Again, that's on YouTube and Facebook. Wednesday at noon, YouTube, Facebook, and the Moan app, we're going to do the Dating Kinky Book Club. Thursday at 2 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook is Trust Earned or is it Given? Building Better Boundaries. Thursday at 3 p.m. So this is going to be a special production at 3 p.m. on Thursday. Normally when I would go private for our Take No Shit workshop, we're actually going to go live publicly with Miss Betty, who's going to be talking on the subject of having a backbone can be anxiety inducing, building better boundaries. So that's actually going to be live on the Curiouser and Dating Kinky YouTube and Facebook. And then on Friday, will be on YouTube, Facebook, and Moan for Do You Ask for Permission to Have Relationships with Others? Talking about non-monogamy and it's not cheating. So that's what we've got coming up later in this week. For those of you who are interested in following me, I'm going to go ahead and pop that link in there. And here, I'll pop it into the chat. I post my schedule on the site, and you can also sign up for email notifications of the lives that I am doing, and that's nookie.datingkinky.com. So again, thank you all. Have an amazing day, and hopefully I will see you at another live, or at least at another Sensuality, Sex, and Orgasms, which, let me look, the next one, where is the next one? So the next one is going to be March 30th for this, and we're going to talk about duration. Do you have it lasting in sex? So that'll be a fun one too. So thanks.